It was really funny. Uh, Even at a young age like that, we could tell whether we were going to have a material, materially good Christmas or rather tight Christmas by how many pigs Dad took to market just before Christmas. If he took two pigs, we knew we were going to have a good one. If he just took one, we knew it was going to be kind of tight. But our Christmases were always about the Savior and about the wise men and about Mary and the baby. And we were taught the true meaning of Christmas every Christmas. And they were always special, whether they were um, full of a lot of gifts or not. We used to always draw names because there was too many of us for us to buy everybody something. So we'd draw names and then we'd get them a gift. And sometimes they were homemade, sometimes we bought them, but they were usually quite small but meaningful to us. We were glad. I think it was a lot more fun to give a gift to somebody than it was to receive what they gave because we had to be a little bit um, ingenious or ingenuitive anyway to put something together that maybe that person would like. But Christmas was a very special time. Well, it wasn't far after Christmas this one year that our whole world was turned upside down, particularly mine. I went with my dad. It was early in the spring, but I went with him out to irrigate. Now, this time I was 9 years old. It was in 51 or 52, right in there. And I walked out with him and we went out to the hayfield and Dad was irrigating there. And as we were walking along, he said, "Son, I want to tell you something. Uh, I just, I'm getting rid of the farm and we're going to run one of the first LDS steak farms owned and run by the church, one of the stakes. It's in Preston, Idaho, and we'll be living in Dayton. The farm is in Dayton." And I said, "You mean we're moving?" And he said, "Yeah." And oh, I was so upset. I don't think he would have ever said anything if he'd have known how bad I felt about it. But when we came in, he announced to the rest of the family, and everybody else was excited about moving. So I was the only one that was the boob, but I didn't want to go. I liked my friends and I liked the farm and I liked everything about it because at 9 years old, I was on that tractor a lot. I learned to drive the tractor when I was 6, and Dave learned when he was 5. We learned the same year. And I can still remember that little 5-year-old guy, Dave, leveling a piece of ground, 5 acres or whatever, and with a leveler. And when he'd get to the end of the row, he'd turn the steering wheel and pull. It had a hand brake for each wheel in the back, and he would pull that lever and turn that steering wheel, and he had to be careful because the back wheel could grab one of the chains that went to the leveler, which hooked to the tractor to pull it along. And if it grabbed that chain, it would pull that leveler right up on top of you. But it didn't happen that way. But I remember that Dave wasn't big enough to reach the clutch. So he had to hold the bottom of the steering wheel and swing down and hit the clutch hard enough that he could disengage the gear shift before the spring of the clutch popped him back up into the seat. You might think that's a joke, but that's absolutely the truth. And I didn't have to quite do that. I had to sit way up on the edge, right up in the front, and maybe even stand up a little bit and then push down on the clutch and disengage or engage the gear. But we did. We worked for our dad. We didn't plow, I don't think, but we did harrow and level the ground. So I was 9 years old by then, so I was well experienced. And we were headed out. Now, the way it was going to be done was that Uncle Herbert, which is my mother's sister's husband's name, lived near Dayton in a town called Weston. And he was going to bring his grain truck, and we were going to load everything that we owned on it and haul it to Dayton, Idaho to work that steak farm. Dad was called, or not called, but hired to be the manager of it. And it was time, and we were waiting around, and we had to get rid of all of our animals and all of our implements and everything. And we had an auction out there, and the auctioneer came. Oh my gosh, I was really enamored with the fact that he could talk so fast, and even as much enamored with the fact that my dad could understand what he was saying. Didn't make any sense at all to me, but it was sure almost like music. And when he sold Pete and Sal, I think the whole family cried. It was really hard to see those animals go. They were as much a part of us as our brothers and sisters. Then it came time to sell the BF Avery, the little tractor. And that was hard to see that go too. And other implements, and one old Ford, the milk cow, her name was Old Ford. Everything was old. Old Ford. When she left, we almost all cried again. She nourished us for all the years that we lived there. And it was hard to see her go. Well, finally, the auction was over, and it was time to move. And we were watching for Uncle Herb. He had a 1948 Chevrolet 2-ton grain truck. And we were upstairs looking out the window that was looked towards the road. And suddenly we saw it rise up over the hill. Now you have to remember, we didn't know because we pulled out our cell phone and called him on the road and said, "Where are you?" You know, we knew by mail that he was going to come on this day, hopefully in such and such time in the morning. And we didn't have a telephone in the house even. We didn't have inside plumbing, no toilet in the house. We had a big hole with a little building over it with toilet seats in it. That was called a toilet, an outhouse, a john. And that's what we had in those days. We were happy. It was just great. We had what we called chamber pots. Actually, we called them slop buckets. I don't know why, but they're usually called chamber pots, so that if something happened in the middle of the night, we didn't have to run clear outside down the path to the outhouse. And then in the morning, it was one of the girls' responsibility to haul all those down to the toilet. That sounds really exciting, doesn't it? We didn't have TV. We didn't have anything. We did have a radio, and oh boy, we loved that radio. We had shows like Sky King, B-Bar B Riders, Inner Sanctum, shows like that were just heard and not seen. But we sure liked them just as much as you like TV shows. But anyway, here came Uncle Herbert's truck up over the hill. And he came down to the house, backed up to the front door, and we started hauling things in and packed that thing clear to the gills. And have you ever seen Beverly Hillbillies as they drive in the little truck with all of their belongings on the back of it? Well, that's what we looked like. We went all the way to Dayton, Idaho. And when we got to Dayton, Idaho, the first thing we saw was that house right there. This is in Dayton, Idaho. And that house just looked beautiful to us. And when we got inside of it, it had a bathroom with a sink and running hot water. a bathtub in the house. What we had to use is a round tin tub. And I know I'd pass through the kitchen when Dad was in there sometimes, and he looked like a huge turtle that had flipped over on its back. But it worked for us. We got the job done. And now we had this beautiful bathtub and a toilet. We just couldn't imagine where that water was going. So we tied a grasshopper with some thread, and we let it down, 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 down as far as we thought we should. We thought maybe it'd bring something back up to show us where the heck it went. And we pulled it back up, and it was still alive, unbelievably. It was still alive, but it was it was just a clean grasshopper. So anyway, we didn't learn till years later how that all worked. But this is the potato cellar right here. Where is my finger? Well, can't see it. Maybe I can show it on this side. Oh yeah, this is the potato cellar right there. This is the chicken coop right here. This is the big barn right up here. And that's 40 feet high. Things happened in there that you will never believe, but I'll tell you about them because they are really, really something. This over here is where the beef cows were. The milk cows were in the corral that was by the barn, but these are the beef cows. And then this right here, the hay, one of the haystacks looks like it's down pretty bad. It's probably about hay time. And the field out there, this is in the winter, so it doesn't give you a good idea, but this field that shows up out here was all pasture, and that's where the milk cows grazed. And when it was time to be milked, we had a dog, and we'd say, "Go get them." And that dog would run out there and round them up and bring them in. But one time we had a bull. That was before we had that dog. And Dad went out there to round up the cows and bring them in. Usually he had one of us, but he didn't dare let us because that bull was acting really strange. So he went out there and he rounded them all up, and the bull stayed behind him. He wouldn't go with the rest of the cows in front of him. And then pretty soon he looked back and that bull was pawing, and he thought, boy, I better get to the barn or I'm in trouble. And pretty soon the bull started running after him, charging him. And Dad had his shovel over his shoulder because he'd just been irrigating. And he took off running as fast as he could, and the bull was catching him fast. And all of a sudden, Dad just turned around and shoved the shovel into the ground. And the bull's head followed the shovel down and hit the blade of the shovel and just split it. But meantime, Dad was hot-footing it down to the corral, and he got right here. Where's my finger? Right here, where the cows would enter, and this bull entered here, and he went around the corner into the corral, pulled the top rung off, a little shorter rung on the other side, but you can't see it. Pulled the top rung off of the fence, and when the bull came around the corner, he smacked it just like Willie Mays would hit a baseball. And that bull walked around blubbering and crying about being hit in the forehead with a piece of the fence. Well, it was very shortly after that that they got rid of the bull and they went to artificial means. But this is where we moved to. And as we went through town, coming to this farm, I saw the school, and there were kids out there playing on the grass, and most of them were roller skating on the sidewalks. And it looked like a lot more kids than we had in Roberts. But anyway, the next day I knew that we'd be there. And it was a little nerve innervating, you know, it was nervous, maybe nervous. And so the next day we went to school, and I didn't know quite what to do. I got to know a couple of people that lived fairly close to us. And it was before the bell ring came in, and I noticed that the sidewalks were just loaded with the roller skaters. And I thought, well, I can help. I can help the principal. I'll just go and kick them off of this sidewalk because it's a sidewalk, not a side skate. So I walked over there, big as you can imagine, and kicked everybody off all the sidewalks. I just patrolled it. Said, no, this is a sidewalk, not a side skate. Well, it wasn't long before the principal came out and got me and brought me into his office and bent me over his desk. And he had 3 rulers in his hand. And he whacked me 3 times over the rear end with those 3 rulers. Boy, if you can imagine how much sound that made. But it didn't hurt a bit because I had a wallet in one pocket and Mom made sure I had a handkerchief in the other side. And it didn't hurt me a bit, but I thought, boy, if I don't make a noise and bawl or do something like that, he's going to hit me again, maybe somewhere else. So I made out, boy, I let out a squawk so loud that everybody out there could hear that I was being punished for kicking them off of their favorite place to be, which was roller skating on the sidewalk.